President Shettima arrives Rome, Italy for Food System Summit.
Presidency disregards claims accusing current administration of blackmailing judiciary.
Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) confirms no trace of animal to human transmission of anthrax in the country.
Of transmission yet. However, it's always paramount for us to start preparing in case we do have that.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall be taking the focus on ministerial expectations for good governance plus SASASNet skills and apprenticeship conference.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on ministerial expectations, like my colleague said. Now, much ado about President Tinubu's ministerial list. There have been wild speculations over those who are likely to make President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's ministerial list. Even a speculative list have already hit some sections of the media.
No question about that, Jumai. Now, the speculations have been so intense with the viral circulation of the purported list, such that the special advisor to the president on special duties, communications and strategies issued a rebuttal indicating that the president would make the list available when he's ready for that exercise.
I know, Kingsley, Section 147 of the 1999 Constitution stipulates that the President shall establish office of ministers and nominees to the offices and shall be confirmed by the Senate. The equivalent state-level provision is Section 192 of the Constitution. The President is bound to appoint at least one minister from states who shall be indigene of such states.
Now, in March this year, that was just about 2 months to the expiration of the previous administration, President Muhammadu Buhari, as it then was, signed 16 alteration bills affecting, of course, the Constitution of the Federal Republic. Now, one of the amendments is that now stipulates that the President, or in the case of states, the governors, shall submit the list of their nominees for cabinet appointments, that is to say as ministers or as commissioners, within 60 days of being sworn into office.
Now, the new amendment to the Constitution requires the President and governors to submit names of persons nominated as ministers or commissioners within 60 days of taking the oath of office for confirmation by the Senate or state assemblies.
Now, what this means, obviously, is that if you were sworn in on the 29th of May, Jumai, you have, of course, up to the 29th of July to submit your list of nominees. There are some states that have already done that. I think last week the Delta State, their governor, forwarded his list, and a couple of other states have equally forwarded their list. But for obvious reasons, the national government often generates quite a great deal of excitement and interest. And this is because, as you indicated, the Constitution mandates the President to appoint a minister from each state of the Federation. This is a carryover from the 1979 Constitution, when at the time we had only 19 states.
So now, could it be right to say that the amendment became necessary as former President Buhari, when he came into office in 2015, delayed for 6 months before he could constitute his cabinet, and it became a subject of discourse even after his re-election in 2019. Things did not change. We did not have a cabinet until 3 months after. Now, precisely, ministers were sworn in on the 21st of August 2019.
That's true. Jumai, we also had some state governors that functioned without having a cabinet in place. I mean, one example was Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola, who was in Osun State as governor. For several years, he had no commissioners who were working with him, but this time the provisions of the Constitution are mandatory. If you are sworn in, 60 days from that moment, of course, you must comply with that order. Then it becomes the business of the legislature at the state level or at the national level, although there is no provision as to what time is delimited for the legislature to screen and approve the nominees who have been tapped for ministerial positions. Now, we do know, of course, that President Ahmed Tinubu had equally indicated before he was sworn in that his target would be, rather than what was circulated at the time as a government of national unity, it would be a government of competence.
Yes, that's what he said. And you know what now the big question is, what kind and caliber of ministers does Nigeria need for good governance? The guests who have assembled will give you answers on the program today. I am Juma Yusuf. We're live in Abuja.
I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I joined my colleague Juma to also welcome you to the program. We have a second topic which has to do with skill acquisition in sub-Saharan Africa. And that will be coming up, of course, in the conversation segment of our program. We'll also have newspaper review and business. For now, let's take the highlights of the morning news. And here is our colleague who is right ready now, Olajide Bello, with the news. Good morning, Jide.
Good morning, Juma. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. And here is the news. Vice President Kashim Shettima has arrived Rome, Italy to represent President Bola Tinubu at the Food Systems Summit. The Vice President, who was accompanied on the visit by the Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, Office of the Vice President and other government officials, had earlier departed the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, Sunday afternoon. He is expected to proceed to St. Petersburg, Russia, to also represent President Bola Tinubu at the Russia-Africa Summit, which commences this week as well. The All Progressives Congress says President Tinubu won a free, fair and credible election in the February 25, 2023 presidential election that produced him as the commander-in-chief in what they describe as the most transparent election ever conducted in Nigeria since 1999. The presidency said this while reacting to the statement by former Vice President and People's Democratic Party presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar accusing the current administration of the plot to undermine the judiciary without providing any shred of evidence. Apart from innuendos and insinuations contained in the said press statement, said the former Vice President Atiku didn't put forward any convincing argument to support his claims in how the President Tinubu-led administration and APC sought to undercut, undermine and compromise the judiciary. Special Advisor to the President, Special Duties, Communications and Strategy, Dilalake, in a release said, no leader with such a sterling and enviable credential as champion of rule of law, independence of judiciary like President Tinubu will ever contemplate undermining the judiciary as alleged by Atiku. The statement adds Atiku Abubakar should be honorable enough as a statesman to allow the judiciary to perform its sacred duty without harassment. Now, seeing overloaded trucks on the highways might soon be a thing of the past as the Federal Road Safety Corps is clamping down on this to avert incessant road crashes. Corps Marshal FRSC Dauda Biu made this known in a media interview in his office.
Since we started this operation on trailers and trucks about 4 months ago, we have not experienced in our record yet a single crash that occur that you have animal or goods and passengers having a crash and then a lot of people dying. We not experience even one. And then we also work with the judiciary at some locations. We set up mobile courts. The state chief judges normally assign magistrate to our patrol team.
Federal government says it will ensure sanity in the mining sector of the economy as more investors continue to indicate interest in exploring the potential in the country. The Director General of Nigerian Mining Cadastral, Amadaya Simon Nkom, said these when he visited Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State.
I'm happy when you say you are here to make sure we work together. We are here to look at all these, and this is for the betterment of your own organization, for the ministry, for Nigeria, and indeed for Nasarawa State and the communities where we are. And that is just my dream.
Mining must and should be done in a regulated way. It must, at the end of the day, be done to be able to now bring benefits, not just to the communities, but to the entire state and to the country at large.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control and CDC says there is no trace of animal-to-human transmission of anthrax in the country. The head of One Health Division of the NCDC, Dr. Nasir Ahmed, says the organization is vigilant and monitoring the situation in Suleja, where the first case was directed.
Any animal that falls sick or falls dead, we want to get an alert.
Because if diagnosis is not, done, it's a big risk to the livestock industry and also to the human population, especially with regard to this particular disease.
Actually, we don't have any case of transmission yet. However, it's always paramount for us to start preparing in case we do have that.
Education sector will receive adequate attention under the renewed hope agenda of the present administration. Director General Confederation of APC Support Group, Keilani Mohammed, said these are the maiden edition of a lecture series organized by course 4 PhD students of Institute of Governance and Development Studies, Nasarawa State University. The event, which took place in Abuja, provides an enabling environment for cross-fertilization of ideas in academics.
We are assuring them that the 25% that will be earmarked for education in this country will go a long way to stop the restiveness in the universities, all these incessant strikes.
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Jumai after this break. Stay with us.
You are going through the brunt of the fuel subsidy. I know the pressure and the demand and lamentation, but you understand it much better. You are the one who understands the labor pain. That is only after that pain you see the smile of a child that you are relieved and forget the pain completely. And that's what we are going through economically. You are the one who can educate better the public to understand that we have to go through this. Cartel and thieves have been raping us and fleecing this country before now. You say enough is enough. We are taking our country back.
My son has always dreamt of being in the spotlight. That's why I give him Bornvita for everyday vitality that gives him the strength to pursue his dreams. Bornvita, strength to dream.
How do I cope with this heat?
By staying 5 degrees cooler.
Body odor is caused by germs, and on hot days, the sweating and the odor are more. That's why you need to get the new improved Dettol Cool Soap, which offers up to 5 degrees instant cooling sensation.
Discover Lipton's flavorful and balanced taste. We pick fine quality tea leaves from selected tea gardens around the world to give you Lipton Yellow Label's flavorful and balanced taste in every sip.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Nigeria means unity.
Nigeria means freedom to me.
Nigeria means greatness to me. Nigeria is indivisible. There is nothing you can do. We all have to savage it together and learn to love each other. We are indivisible. As a mother and a leader, I will always preach for peace and unity in this country, because that is the only thing that will give us progress.
Though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand, and it is the woman that does that.
For joining us on Good Morning Nigeria, development experts call for improved education curriculum to narrow skills gap and ultimately reduce unemployment. Let's join Kunle Ade for details on business news.
Institutions churn out hundreds of thousands of graduates annually, and the employment space is now saturated. Consequently, these graduates have flooded the labor market and they are now at the mercy of a few employers. Development experts say youth unemployment puts a brake on national economies, and lack of illiterate and skilled young workforce limits business ability to generate higher growth, better profits, and more jobs. They are craving for a review of education curriculum that will narrow skills gap and make the youths employable.
Generally speaking, Nigerians are looked upon around the world as some of the most educated people. But at the same time, we have the highest, perhaps, the highest number of out-of-school children. So illiteracy is still a major issue in our country. If we cannot deal with the issue of illiteracy, then we will not be able to make our people employable. We will not be able to create jobs. Education opens the mind and helps the individual. Many of the so-called, permit me to use that word, university graduates that are unemployed today, many are unemployable. We need to take education, particularly basic education, primary school, early secondary school, we need to take that serious. By the time we have an educated population, we'll find that the problems will be getting solved by and by.
They say education ultimately leads to remarkable and socio-economic gains. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Many thanks, Kunle Adeyeye, for the business news package. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the front pages of the papers we have this morning.
Newspaper reviewer Chukwudi Okologbaja is in the studio. Good morning, Chukwudi.
Chubai, yes, I'm here.
It's good to see you.
Same here.
Hope
Good morning,
a swell
Kingsley.
weekend.
Yeah, well, it was fine. I feel very fresh this morning. I didn't know why. Well,
The weather is lovely.
The Choose the Boy thing is there, but there's an extra spark.
It's for you to disclose where that spark is coming from.
And they find I'm trouble.
Let's begin the review. We have some papers to review this morning. Let's begin with the Blueprint newspaper. And just below the masthead, we have Nigerians curb travels, other expenses as fuel price hike bites harder. Nigerians curb travels, other expenses as fuel price hike bites harder. You find details on page 25. Reforms. Naira falls 85%. Revenue surge 142%. Masses under pressure. That's coming from Rwanda. You find the details on page 24. National Hijra chair loud Tinubu over Nakon's return to VP's office. You find the details on page 8. Below the picture story there, First Bank reports gross earnings of 607 billion in 6 months. Details on page 25. Poultry farmers to FG rescue our sector from total collapse. Find details on page 5. 6 friends die after consuming drink served by 7th friend. Find details on page 9. Police repel bandits, kill 2 in Niger. 3 villagers abducted. With rider, gunmen invade Marcos Nasarawa residence, injures guards. The details is on page 6. And the headlines we have in the Blueprint newspaper: Ministerial list with 4 days to go. Lobbyists put Tinubu under intense pressure. With riders politicking of list, our worry. Senate source. Kinsley.
Okay, well, I have both the leadership and the New Telegraph. Let's take some of the headlines from the front page of the leadership newspaper, particularly the lead story. Now, the lead story is a graphic representation with the headline: NAS, that's National Assembly, spends 53.7 billion naira on cars for lawmakers in 12 years. National Assembly spends 53.7 billion naira on cars for lawmakers in 12 years. That's to say 3 sets of Assembly members. We can't continue this way. CSOs say spending on cars unjustifiable and unsustainable. You have the details on page 4, the details, of course, of those riders and the main headlines. And then the illustration there shows what was spent. In 2011, it was 3.5 billion. In 2015, it was 4.7 billion. And in 2019, it was 5.5 billion. And now in 2023, the proposal is for 40 billion. I think you can try to at least do the maths, but also disregard the photograph there, because in 2023, what we are seeing there is the photograph of a Rolls Royce. There's no indication yet that the lawmakers are going to have a Rolls. You know, that looks like a Rolls. I mean, not that it looks like, it's a photograph of a Rolls.
It's a sweet name, a Rolls, but I don't think it's going to roll in.
Well, if that happened, then of course I'm sure there will be more reactions. So you have that there, and then the other headlines there says APC zoning. It's North Central Stone, says Northwest Vice Chair. What is APC zoning about? In this case, it's not indicated. But details on page 4. Also on page 4, 103 corpses from #EndSARS crisis not killed at Lekki toll gate. That's according to the Lagos State government. That story is on page 4. And of course, this is a reaction to a story that went viral at the weekend following a notice that there was going to be a mass burial of 103 corpses. So 103 corpses from NSAS crisis not killed at Lekki toll gate, according to the Lagos State government. Now, leadership newspaper, above the nameplate, says MPC monetary.
Telegraph, yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah, that's the leadership a moment ago, but now this is New Telegraph, thanks. Above the nameplate, MPC, that's Monetary Policy Committee, analysts divided over a possible rate hike. That's on page 22. Below the name flag, Shatima leaves to represent Tinubu at summits in Rome and Russia. Ministerial nominees list out this week. And of course, this is the toing and froing. Heavens won't fall if you are removed as president. Atiku replies Tinubu, page 2. Akeredolu sharing video of governor in wicked condition, insensitive and privacy invasion. That's according to Ajulo. Court Medview Airlines to pay $1.8 million and 100 million naira over contract breach. Musk, time to say goodbye to Twitter logo. Fuel, Nigeria and others face small pump price increase. Now, where is that coming from? You'll find the details on pages 2 and 8. Over 50 Muslims and traditional leaders worship with Christians in Kaduna. And politicians feeling disunity. That's according to an Islamic scholar. Ogun students beat up teacher checkmating cheating during exam. Galloping costs of living, reduce emolument, size of governments and palliatives. Afenifere urges Tinubu, says total socio-economic dislocation imminent. Advocates OBJ's debt forgiveness. Insecurity, why federal government can't dialogue with bandits by lawyers. And then lastly, on the front page there, it is according to a study, twice a year shots may replace hypertension pills. That's on page 27. Chukwudi.
Twice a year shot may replace hypertension pills.
Yeah, that's on
Whoa,
page 27.
that would be a good one. If there are no side effects that are not very,
yeah, we just hope that the
understand.
details have been sorted out.
Exactly, that's the point.
Yes.
You know,
but let me just issue a caveat, because I'm on page 27 now.
Okay.
And I can't find the story here.
Okay.
I can't find it. Yeah, it's probably on another page. I'll just live through the.
Usually
it's okay. I'm sure the days ahead will reveal, you know, wherever that story is headed. I always like us to go domestic as much as we can, because as Kingsley and I discussed some time back, a reorientation, a reevaluation of our values, cultural, social, whatever our ethics are, is very important for this country to resurface in terms of moral inclination. You were talking about students that beat up a teacher.
What a generation.
No, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Of course, things like that are happening in our society now. But the fact that they've become a deluge does not imply that when they do happen, we should not mention it.
No, we got to.
What are we going to do to those children? And where is Africa headed in terms of keeping up morals? A teacher catches you engaged cheating, and you have the temerity, because that's what it is, temerity, you know, to even answer him, let alone lay your hands on him. Jumai, I am really, really worried where we're headed to. And you can't blame them. What are the values of society now? Who gets the chieftaincy these days in the villages? The richest? Actually, the youngest could be some of the youngest could be composed from the ranks of Yahoo boys.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And it doesn't seem to worry our traditional rulers. Talk for another day. Where is the National Orientation Agency?
Talk for another day. It's a burning issue.
Well, Chukwudi, thanks a lot for.
I feel bad.
Thanks a lot for stressing that subject. But this Ogun State government has, according to the story, condemned the act and vowed that it would not condone acts of indiscipline by learners across the state. I gave the warning why well, that's just one leg of it. Incident with journalists has been confirmed also by the police, and that 10 of the suspects have been arrested.
Okay, fine.
So the next thing will be diligent prosecution.
Thank you.
Diligent prosecution. If they are minors, that person should be treated.
Minors with adult fists.
Well, no, even regardless, a 6-year-old can pick a gun and shoot somebody. I mean, that's. I'm not saying that happens in our culture. You have the Children and Young Persons Law that normally would apply, and the juvenile criminal jurisprudence that will apply. But the key thing is, whatever it is, whatever their ages are, prosecute these persons. You know, there's assault is one of the one of the offenses. Example practice is also another. So there are many pieces of legislation that you can reach out to and say, look, listen, this is what happens, and let us also get to know what the outcome of the trial is, or the prosecution, because it's not sufficient to say they have been arrested. In the course of the trial, let journalists or the media cover the trial, or let there be accurate statements regarding the status of the trial, be issued from time to time. And when there is a judgment delivered, you also let people know, so that it serves as a deterrent. It is not just sufficient to say, oh, they are going to be tried, and then 1 year later we don't hear anything. 2 years later we don't hear anything, and then we just forget. And then one day it happens again. We say, "Oh, Chukwudi, you remember that thing happened in Ogun?" And of course, that's the point.
The movement to "it is no longer good to be good" should be halted in this country.
Just like 6 friends die after consuming drinks served by 7th friends. And the families are saying they are not pressing charges. They are just going to.
It is the families not pressing charges that is my problem.
Yes.
Sometimes a crime, not sometimes, a crime is not something that family relationships can cover up. It becomes police matter. I mean, homicide is homicide.
It's homicide.
You understand?
Precisely.
So if somebody has been killed, the police should wade in, whether mom or dad are so intricately connected to the family of the people who done it. You know?
Not necessarily killed. I mean, killed, of course, when you say, if there's an incident of unlawful death.
Unlawful death, yes.
Unlawful. Or suspicious death.
Yes.
And then it is the responsibility of the state.
That's it. To prosecute.
It's not an
individual matter.
No. You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They will go around and pay compensation.
Yes.
Maybe 1 million. That is for the life of an individual. That's fine. Collect your 1 million, but the state protects everybody and guarantees safety, life, and security of everyone. So if you take that life unlawfully, then you account for it.
National Assembly, spends over 53 billion naira on cars in 12 years. Did we read that? I think it must be an investigation. I don't think it's attributed. So we have to be careful, because the lawmakers could come out tomorrow and tell you those figures are bloated figures and all that.
Just like the ministerial list that is just
so I'll try to talk responsibly and maturely about it. Are we doing all we can to reduce cost in the purchase of items that are not absolutely necessary? That's the question I'm going to ask. It's just as I would say, is government not too bloated? Can we do one or two things to make sure that we slim down a bit so that we free up money for development? Those are the issues at the end of the day.
I tell you, those considerations you have raised will not matter in this instance. And in my opinion, this is the reason. There is always an attempt at equalizer. The lawmakers would argue that the executive has cars for ministers at the national level and commissioners at the state level. They will also tell you that the judiciary has cars for judicial officers and for judges.
All sorts of cars. How exotic are they? That's the point.
You can say, it then depends on them. They will also tell you the president has cars. So of course, and the president, of course, is president of the Federal Republic. And that they are an arm of government, and that they don't need it for their own self-aggrandizement, but rather to enable them to do the work. But if you want to do the work, the question then arises, what kind of vehicle? Chukudi, that's why your question is important. What kind of vehicle do you need to do the work? And then at the end of 4 years, what happens to the vehicle? It becomes part of your severance package.
Kingsley, I was in Salvador, Bahia, that's in Brazil, way back in time. That's more than 12 years now. When I saw the cars on the road, they were like matchboxes. Yes. I saw occasional jeeps on the road. They are not obsessed with the kind of things, the luxury that has invaded our mentality. The culture orientation of a people matter a lot.
Cars, Nigerians we're allowed people actually.
Yeah, as Brazil. Brazil manufactures aircraft. Embraer, it's based in Brazil.
They don't have inferiority complex.
Precise. No, I said manufacture. Yeah. And we use some of the aircraft in our skies here. we use the brand new Embraer jets. You see, they manufactured in Brazil.
Well, on that note,
no, before I know we're getting pressed. Some obituaries over the weekend. Yes. One of them, of course, one of the greatest crooners, that's to say singers of all time, Tony Bennett. He was a jazz singer, he was a pop singer, but not to the like of the mold of Michael Jackson. Tony Bennett, he would have been 97 on the 3rd of next month, being August. Of course, he's now gone ahead, of course, to meet with other crooners who went on long before now. I'm talking about Frank Sinatra, Perry Como, Jerry Vale, and Nat King Cole.
There he goes into his library again.
Nat King Cole. So
how Tony Bennett stores it up?
Tony Bennett, great singer. One of his songs that is my favorite. I left my heart in San Francisco.
Did you?
Tony Bennett said.
Did you?
Kingsley Sadolo.
There must be a story behind that. Chukudi, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
We'll take a break. When we return, our conversation will begin. Let's go away.
We must all join hands to work hard so that we build a country for our grandchildren.
My hope is that
we develop as a nation where every citizen is given his due right. There is transparency, honesty, and integrity.
Put the interests of this country first and foremost. Interests of Nigeria is being one nation, one people.
We need, if I mean, to put things right, things that have gone wrong before, to try and put right. For this, for the love of country.
Oh, you can reach the stars, anything your heart believes. Oh, just a little try, there's no limit to your dreams.
Here's to the intentional ones. To those who break through the limits. To those who always go for it.
We are Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. We are political parties. We are the pathway to political power. IPAC, in line with its core mandate, is carrying out peer review mechanism for elected political office holders. Performance of the President of Nigeria, state governors, state and National Assembly members will be assessed comparatively. This will trigger healthy competition amongst our elected politicians to deliver dividends of democracy like good roads, good healthcare delivery system, good schools, full employment, security, and so on. This prestigious program will soon be shown live on television stations across Nigeria. IPAC, deepening and consolidating democracy.
The Council of Our Fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Stage for our conversation, which is on ministerial expectations for good governance. Let's take this background report by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
The swearing-in of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the beginning of another era in Nigerian governance. A new phase, and Nigerians are already experiencing its plans. Nigerians have then been talking about what the focus of these ministers should be when appointed, emphasizing good governance as a major platform the president needs to succeed in his administration. Many have advised the president to meet up his campaign promise of 35% affirmative action plan of women inclusive representation in his government, while some quarters herald the appointment of high-performing youths. Many say it's pertinent for the president to shift away from the norm of the past, where appointments were made based on mundane reasons rather than competence, character, and capacity. It is understandable that the ministries need the right persons to steer the affairs of the country, as well as support in the actualization of the vision and mission of the current administration to renew the hope of Nigerians. Nigerians have expressed optimism that they are expecting a cabinet that is capable of tackling insecurity, corruption, and bring economic development to the country. They want competent individuals with proven track records to succeed in their respective fields to drive progress and development, and there must be a diverse representation. By law, the president is meant to name his cabinet within 60 days after taking the oath of office on May 29 and transmit it to the Senate for confirmation. This means the president has few days left to submit his cabinet list to the Senate as recommended by the Constitution. Now, for those who might make the ministerial list of President Tinubu, how ready are they to deliver good governance to the expectations of Nigerians? This is a major question guests already seated will be answering shortly.
Thank you very much, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for the backgrounder. We have with us three regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria. Let's welcome, after some time that we've not had him on the program, Dr. Abubakar Kari. Dr. Abubakar Kari is an associate professor of political sociology at the University of Abuja. Dr. Kari, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me, Kingsley.
And also joining us is Ezenwa Nwagu, Chairman Partners for Electoral Reform and convener Say No Campaign Nigeria, our regular. You're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Still joining us via Zoom from Ibadan on your state is Emmanuel Remi Ayede, Professor of Political Institutions, Governance and Public Policy Department of Political Science, University of Ibadan. It's a pleasure to have you join us, also a regular.
It's a pleasure to be on this program this morning.
Yesley?
Okay, thanks. Professor Ayede, we might as well kick off today's conversation with you in Ibadan. The Zoom connection is crisp at this time, so let's take advantage of that. Professor Ayede, well, the president is still within the constitutionally mandated period for him to submit his list of ministerial nominees to the Senate for consideration. But of course, there's been a lot of speculation, and the government has had a lot also on its hands since it came on the 29th of May. In your opinion, what is it that we should be looking out for when the list eventually is read on the floor of the Senate?
Well, I think that there are a number of factors that affect the decision or the choice of individuals in a presidential system like this. The president has to weigh alternative factors. First is the decision between whether to dominate the cabinet with technocrats, those who have been in government, or to rely on politicians. Another factor will also be choosing between government officials, people who have worked with him before while he was governor in Lagos, and those who have been very active since he has assumed office, or looking beyond the public sector to also consider people from the private and voluntary sectors, to have a mix of experiences from within government institutions and also from people who have no government experience previously. Then, of course, the third alternative to weigh again, we balance out, will be between those who are ideologically committed and who have similar commitment ideologically, or if you like, loyalty to his idea or agenda. These are very important factors that you have to take into consideration, aside, of course, from the provision of the Constitution that requires him, to also choose a minister from each state of the Federation. And then, of course, he has to also decide what the size of the cabinet would be. If you look at previous administration, the number of ministers go as far as 42. And then, of course, now that we are talking about cutting the cost of governance, one would want to see how it's going to deal with that, whether it will have less than 40 ministers or more. Then I think another last factor would be the whole idea of having a minister of state. If you recall Keyamo's letter to the which he published shortly after the end of the previous administration, he talked about the challenges that face ministers of state and how is that office seems to be a dormant position. So we want to see how all of these factors play out in the decision of the government to choose, to determine the size of his cabinet, and also where to look in terms of the individuals that will come from the various states to populate the cabinet.
Okay, thank you, Prof. We'll get back to you as the conversation deepens. Now, let's bring in Ezenwa Nwagu. They say it takes a team to build a dream, because we can see that it's a dream that has come true for this present administration, and Nigerians are expecting President Tinubu to appoint credible and competent people as ministers. Let's have your opinion.
Well, I think we elected the president, so the buck stops on his table. The character and complexion and the vision that that president has, for me, may eventually determine, and indeed the direction of policy that he and my argument has been that when I hear things like credible, character, and all of those things, it's I just want to think that we are beginning to think rather in terms of narrowing the space for which this president can choose. A lot of people are beginning to throw into the mix what they call technocrats, as if you are a politician, you can't be a technocrat. I've always felt that if you are interested in power, you need to be invested in it in a way that guarantees that you don't sit in one multilateral organization somewhere. Election is being held in Nigeria. People are breaking their heads and all that. Then you position yourself as technocrat. If you check the CV of most of the politicians, whether in the National Assembly or even in public offices, whether in the civil service, you'll be shocked that you have people who have double PhDs. And those people are technocrats, and they are invested in a candidate. So let's clear it out for me. What this president needs is to clearly define his vision and then find the kind of people that can help him execute that vision. Whether they are politicians, for me, is immaterial. Whether they come from, Kaura Namoda or somewhere in Ohafia, that's immaterial. What is important is that the debate has never focused on what do we really want as a people. Because it's our agenda setting period. This president, in the last 40 years, Gakin, you've heard me say it several times, the direction of the playbook for running Nigeria is the same. Anybody who, whether it's President Obasanjo, whether it is Yaradua, whether it's Jonathan, whether it is President Muhammadu Buhari, if you look at the deeper policies of those governments, you find out that the playbook is the same. From 1999, what we have done is privatization. What we have done is monetization. What we have done is commercialization. What we have done is chasing FDIs, foreign direct investment, agriculture, putting a lot of money in agriculture. But if you then look at it, there are no new debates going on as far as I'm concerned. I'm listening to see whether I will hear something different. I'm still hearing the same things for which we protested as university students: removal of oil subsidy, deregulation of the economy, and all of those things. And this president has also invested in that area. And all the candidates who came in the election stayed on the same economic conversation. So if they are going to find people, they are going to find people who will help them to deepen this same focus, this playbook. So it will depend on the character who is like a script given to you. Your ability to act it very well is what determines whether you are saying. So I am going to say, look, Mr. President, what Nigeria is looking for is that we want people who can understand that there is a need to invest in public education, that there is a need to invest in housing for people who are working, who can't afford the kind of, there are no mortgages anymore to build houses. We want to see investment in preventive health, because what you have now is that you are putting a lot of money in buying drugs. So find the people who are thinking for the people. If you find those people, they may not fit the current model that people are scripting for him. Those people may just even be in NTA, sitting down and watching and hoping that, because the people who want to change this country are not speaking out. Now there is a positioning. If you come to this city now, People from outside the country are relocating. They are sharing their CVs everywhere. They have no connection with the feeling of the ordinary people of this country. So I am wary of this debate about setting agenda for good governance for Mr. President and talking about technocrats and all of those things. Politicians should not be appointed. Let him find the people. Let us draw a new agenda. A new agenda that is pro-people, pro-poor, and pro-investment in our own country. Because this FDI they've been chasing since 1999, I have not seen what it has. I asked in one of your sister programs, I said, I don't know whether it is foreign direct investment that developed Russia, that developed America, that developed Britain, that developed Canada. It is the resources of their own people that developed it. We need a president and a team that can galvanize the energies, the potentials, the capacities, the competencies that exist in Nigeria to push development for us.
All right, Azewa, thank you very much there for your opening comments. So let's bring in now Dr. Kari. Dr. Kari, in your opinion, what are the issues that the president should consider in stitching together his cabinet?
Well, the issues are quite clear, and they are the normal issues. The Prof from Ibadan mentioned some of them, but my own take is that the cabinet will likely, as usual, going to be a mixed cabinet, of course. The so-called technocrats, and as mentioned by Eze, many of them can actually be found within the political class. As a matter of fact, I think it is a constitutional requirement that you have to belong to a political party before you become a minister. So some of them conveniently take membership of political parties for the purpose of becoming ministers.
No, okay, I'm sorry, let me just interject and clarify that. It used to be, not that you needed to belong to a political party. Before the amendment to the Constitution, the requirement was that for you to be a minister or a commissioner, that you should be eligible for election to the House of Representatives. Yes. Now, on the face of it, you will say, okay, what are the qualifications for eligibility?
Of a party.
One of them, which is also provided for in the Constitution.
Yes.
That's right. Now, that has been eliminated. So, sorry for the interruption.
Thank you for the clarification. So, I think the major issue is Tinubu will likely appoint his own people in court. He is the president. He embodies certain ideas and ideals and principles, and he will not likely go and select people who do not share in his view, in his vision. So first and foremost, that is going to be the major criterion. The major criterion is that Tinubu will look for people who believe in what he believes, who he will repose absolute confidence in believing that they will do what he wants them to do. That is one. Two, knowing Tinubu as a politician, he believes in reward. So he will likely go for people who have assisted him in becoming president. Another issue that I envisage he's going to consider in Lagos, and even as a reputation, Tinubu always goes for people of competence. That's the general belief. He is reputed to have discovered so many talents, so he will likely go towards direction. It may not just be business as usual that we are used to, or relying wholly on some individuals, whether they are godfathers or governors or whatever, to give him the people to be ministers. Perhaps that's why it has taken him so long.
You say you go to one direction. Can you explain that?
The direction I'm talking about is that, as I mentioned earlier on, Tinubu has built a reputation for discovering talents, extraordinary people who he believes seriously that they can add value. There are so many examples, particularly in his Lagos State cabinet when he was governor, and among the so-called Tinubu boys. So that's the direction I'm talking about. The other government that passed, particularly the Buhari administration, appear to have relied on the recommendation of others, even to an extent the Jonathan administration. I don't see that kind of thing happening. And perhaps that is why it has taken him so long. It wasn't like Buhari, who in the first place never wanted to form cabinet, so to say, because he was deeply suspicious of politicians. So I believe what has been going on since the swearing in is for Tinubu to sift, to consider, pick and drop, until he satisfies himself that so and so person are the people that share in my vision, people that I believe I can work with, people that I believe also fall within my reward system. So there will be a number of people who have played significant role in the last election.
Dr. Kari, thank you very much. In the last election, the point you just made now, it's the takeoff for me to pop the next question to Professor Ayede. Professor Ayede, well, when you are playing in, let's say, the state league, the odds are different from when you are playing at the national league. I'm saying this because, yes, Tinubu, as governor of Lagos, had a circumscribed environment. You would know those who were within the Lagos environment, and those, of course, who were in the southwest area, from amongst whom he tapped members of his team. But here we are talking about the national platform and a number of considerations. Look, you won an election. You didn't have to be the one to campaign down to the grassroots in each of those states. You will have state coordinators. In other words, you will have your eyes and the ears in the respective states. The Constitution also mandates you to have a minister from each state of the federation. You can't possibly know everybody in the country. So, does this then alter, as it were, if you like, the challenge or the rigor of having to get the right kind of persons? Because those to whom you might, shall we say, subcontract the task of saying, look, find out for me or send me one or two names from your locations, may just be looking for their own cronies, you know, those with whom they have been in the political trenches, and not the same technocrat persons that some of us have been talking about. Looks like a tough call, isn't it, Prof?
Yes, I think it's really a very tough call because if you look at what is already happening in terms of the assistance that he has announced so far, even within the Southwest, there are claims about the negotiation of the appointments in the name of the Southwest. So I think that it's easier for him in Lagos because even preparing for the election, he had some of these very smart guys who are doing very well in their various professions. They were brought together to support the ambition of being the governor. And so many of them naturally transited into those positions of commissioner. And he was extremely very familiar with every one of them. And that worked very well for him. But in a larger Nigerian context, it's a very challenging and a tough call. And when you look back at the build-up to the election, whether it's at the level of the party primaries or the national elections, you see some of the challenges that he faced. At particular moments, it has to be the party, especially the stalwarts within the party, that came out openly to say, okay, this is where we stand. Especially the time the governors, the northern governors declared that the ticket must go down to the south. So you see, it's a very different situation, and he has to deal with it. Interestingly, he has worked across the length and breadth of Nigeria, and he has networks across the country. But my feeling is that most of these people are not likely to constitute the cabinet. You may have to rely on some of them, you know, to nominate candidates. And when you see what has transpired, even in the election of the officers of the National Assembly, you know that this is really a very tough call for him. And probably that actually accounted for why he has not announced the list long before now, because we are very close to the timeline established by the Constitution. So yes, he's going to have a few that he's familiar with, but a lot of them might be recommended by the different political stalwarts within the party. Those who have in fact mobilized support from across the country for his ambition. And he has to deal with that. The interesting thing is really that he also has to wait, because again, the good thing is that he has the authority to shuffle his cabinet. I think it is in the second reconstitution of the cabinet that we might have the kind of individuals that we can say, okay, these are people that he is familiar with and can deliver for him. But this particular challenge is not a challenge for him alone. It will not go away. Every president that comes in will have to deal with that, because Nigeria is a vast country. We are very diverse. And he has to garner vote from every part of the country, and people have to support him to do that. Those people definitely will have a voice in the choice of ministers, and that's where the situation is. If it was a lean cabinet, maybe you have like 15 or 19, like they have in the United States, this will be easily filled. But when you're talking about 40 or so individuals, it's extremely going to be difficult for him to have a firm familiarity with the 42 people who are going to, or less, who are going to, if not more, who are going to constitute the cabinet. So it's a challenge for him. He is on the saddle. He said this, he has prepared for it. Let's see how he's able to deliver.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Ezenwa, Prof has raised some pertinent questions, but one question I need to ask you is: Nigerians have been calling for, reduction in reduce the cost of governance, and we have 42 people, maybe more than that, as ministers. Do you think President Tinubu will be looking at merging some ministries to sort of reduce it?
Well, I think the Orosanya panel report has been dangling in, somehow. The specter of it has been running through the conversations about mergers and collapsing ministries and agencies and all of that. The merit of it is still something that is debatable. But my insistence has always been about the fact that whether it is one ministry or two ministries or three ministries, the deliverables, we have not been able to put service delivery, performance, service delivery and outcomes and consequences. So most of the time, everyone, if you see Ministry of Information, for instance, there was a time it was Ministry of Information and Culture. Something that another point they put orientation, youth development. The transformations that you see in agencies has more to do with the vision and determination of the individual who gets into that place. So whether it is matched or not, if we have the same orientation, if we have the same attitude where our service delivery outcomes does not match what expectations, then there are going to be challenges. So I'm saying yes, I agree that you need to cut the cost of governance, but you need to also think about, because when you fill one hole, you probably have also set up another challenge. And that's what we always see. We are always thinking that when we solve one problem, we've solved. You open up the issue. If you downsize, if you merge, you sack people. When you sack them, where do they go to? Is there an alternative arrangement that has been made for those people that you are going to sack? All of those issues should come into consideration. But our accountability mechanisms are weak. We don't hold people accountable. The president can appoint a minister, and I've made that point. The policies of government, for instance, are meant for the people. whether it is the Ruga livestock transformation that we saw in the past administration or the rest, a minister should take that back to the people. He's first and foremost a representative, because we're a big country. Part of most of the appointments that you see is also to accommodate the diversities that we have in our country. That's why that appointment from different states is so that every part of the country can feel a sense of belonging, and is at the table where conversations are being held. But most of the times, those people are no longer representatives. They don't go back to their people. And that's why you see the tensions. Because if you have a policy and a minister takes it and organizes a town hall in the state where he's representing, for instance, and say, look, this is what we are discussing. What are the feedbacks that I can take to cabinet? But so whether they are 42 or 39 or 19, if we still have the thinking that we work for ourselves, we don't work for the people, we will still have, because all these debates is, I think the interest of NTA is to fashion an agenda that can propel development, that can propel good governance. If that is the motive of the conversation, then it has to be about what can move the needle a bit from where we currently are. And I'm saying this president, Kari and they have been talking about people within his vision. We also need disruptors. A cabinet should have people who can disrupt, who can who can shake this president out of this feeling of, I did it in Lagos. What you did in Lagos is still an urban slum. Let's not make any pretenses about it. Yes, you have most of the investments are investments that have transformed, the same conditions that we are talking about. You have built your Banana Island, you have opened your Lekki 1, Lekki 2, Lekki 3, you have built a road that people have to pay for, and then the whole challenge of traffic is still there. There are people who need to disrupt that thinking and say, look, like you said, Nigeria is big. The conditions that of Lagos is not the same condition in certain parts of the country. You need a new dynamics. That dynamics needs to be brought by people who know the objective condition of the reality of that environment. And most of the times, it is not politicians who nominate those people. Politicians sometimes even ask those they are appointing to write undertaking of how much they are going to be given to them at the end of your appointment, if they nominate you for appointment. So all of this plays, but the people are hungry. They are hungry for good governance. They are hungry for development. What can trigger that is, first and foremost, disruptors, people who can shift this thinking. Because we've stayed here for too long, in terms of this appointment, this debate. If we do a media content analysis now of the past, what was debated when Buhari came in 1999, this agenda was also set. We saw the people who were appointed. Many of them were, in terms of qualification, in terms of what we know, we expected them to shift the needle. If we still complain, we have brought people from IMF, we have brought from the World Bank, we have brought from everywhere, yet the country has remained in that mood of wanting more. That wanting more will come from disruptors.
Okay, well,
I don't want to use static so that you don't.
Ezewa, thank you very much. I know Dr. Kari was smiling when Ezewa was talking about the search for disruptors. Well, I just want to also chip in this. Maybe you can respond to it, but it's a preface for the next question I'm going to ask. There are persons who would argue that from 1999, in Lagos, for instance, there was disruption of the pre-existing order. Disruption in terms of traffic management. Before 1999, there was no LASMA. LASMA is the Lagos Traffic Management Authority. It was created when Banire was Commissioner for Transportation, Public Transportation, in 2001. And you have had disruption in terms of BRT. BRT was part of, it's not, BRT is only a part of it. And then all the Lagos rail system that you are having now, well, Lamata was Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, World Bank backed. Of course, they took concessionary loans from the World Bank. That's disruption. If you go to the environment, sorry, I'm speaking, I'm using my knowledge of Lagos to say this. Environment, Lagos was a very filthy state. And you had flooding in most parts of Lagos. But that, again, had to be disrupted. More channels were created, more canals were constructed. In the past, if you saw those canals, they were all full of weed and silted. They had to be cleared up. Again, that was part of the disruption. Finances were poor. They said, okay, how much revenue can you collect, X, Y, Z? And then, boom. Because if you don't have revenue, you can't achieve some of these things. And they've also had disruptions also in the education sector. I acknowledge, and I'm sure many others will acknowledge, that, again, the field is much wider in Nigeria, and the tendencies are certainly not exactly the same in Lagos. And by the way, but the island you talked about, which was part of the Ikoyi axis, wasn't built by the Lagos state government. You have private investors. Lekki has not been built by the Lagos state government, but of course, the only thing that part of what happened is that now if you're having a transaction, the rate per square meter has gone up. So more money comes to the state government. Dr. Kari, see, listening to SNY would appreciate if you may, the idealism that he brings in. And the fact that, let's move away from all of these things and talk about the agenda that the government should have, and then having a people disposition. Well, here we are. Political sociology, which is your field. The nature of our politics remains essentially one of prebendalism. So, we are saying all of this. The SNY is making its propositions. And don't forget, governors are very powerful. And the way it is in our political matrix today, a ministerial position has become equally very powerful. When you are looking at the power brokers, and there are indices for measuring this, you look at, of course, the president, vice president, you look at the Senate, the governors, you look at ministers, and then sometimes, if you appoint a minister from a state without the governor's consent, there could be issues. So how do we accommodate the prevailing tendencies into the kind of trajectory that SNY would like us to get into?
Well, the hope is that President Tinubu has the necessary political dexterity to bring about this kind of accommodation. But before then, let me say I wholly subscribe to Eze's proposition about disruptors. I think throughout history, change has come quicker with disruptors. And there are some elements even within the APC, even close to Tinubu, who perhaps approximate this tendency to disrupt. So all Tinubu needs to know, I'm not going to mention them, perhaps is to pick one or two of them. And certainly we need disruptors in some key sectors of governance, particularly in the area of power and energy, anti-corruption, judiciary, talking about the Attorney General. We need people who are strong-willed, who are controversial, who are likely not to bow to anything. But the problem is, will Tinubu have the temperament to accommodate them? Because some of the disruptors actually constitute a clear and present challenge to the president himself. So that is the problem with disruptors, but we actually need them. So as for trying to reconcile all interests, I think that is part of the qualities a president should have. A president should be able to be sensitive enough to, while picking competent people who represent states, also ensure that in so doing, he does not have problem with the political class in that particular state or region. Appointing a minister is a very serious big deal. As you rightly pointed out, a minister is very, very powerful. He could come out and begin to challenge governor, and many of them actually do. Some of them have actually been the opponents of the governors in the first place. or they will likely try to use their positions to even usurp power from the governors. So if the president picks somebody who is perceived very clearly to be the opponent of the governor, there will be problem. But a president should be able to consider all these things and to have a mechanism of trying to water down the possible backlash of hostility between the minister and the governor. And of course, in every state also there are the so-called godfathers, the people who are the movers and shakers of the party in that state. So if the minister is not one of them, or if the minister is not one that they are happy with, there will also be problem. But that is a challenge I believe Tinubu knows very well, and he should be able to tackle it.
Indeed, talking about competence and capability of those ministers, we've been talking about what Tinubu needs. We've not really talked about what the people need and what the people want. Let's bring in Professor Ayade. As Enwa said, when we talk about competence and capability, it means we are narrowing the space from which the president can pick his ministers. Let's have your opinion on that.
I think we are narrowing the space at all. As he himself said, technocrats can be found anywhere, in the private sector, in the civil society sector, in government, and then even within politics. At least referred to people who are in the National Assembly who have PhDs and all of that. Now, let us not make a mistake of thinking that when we talk about technocrats, we are talking about certificates, because that's actually where we normally get it wrong in Nigeria. We have certificates all over the place. What we're talking about is people who have proven their capacity in every sphere of human endeavor where they have been engaged. So it's not about whether people have multiple university certificates. It's about people who have demonstrated capacity to make a difference, which in a sense he talks about disruption. And that's the way to understand it. So we are thinking that the president should look out for people like that, and they are not confined to any sector at all. But the challenge that the president will have to deal with is the political part of it, because in Lagos, he had firm control of the politics. But at the national level, he does not. There are too many centers of power, too many forces at play, and he has to balance it. And I think that's the point that Professor Kari has said. Many people make a mistake of talking about Lagos as if once you have succeeded in Lagos, or you have the experience of Lagos, the changes that have happened in Lagos, you will be able to bring that to Nigeria. I think that would be the greatest mistake that the president will make. I think the president must be very flexible, must be very strategic in addressing, in choosing his cabinet. And then, of course, you then go on to the other point that Eze has said regarding policies. If you put that on the table, then you start with what policy measures has the president put in place since May 29 this year. And the first thing you will see is taking one step forward and taking 2 steps backward because of the backlash. So I think the president has a hard task to do, balancing the interests of his political supporters and promoters vis-a-vis the interests of Nigerians in general. And that's the question of accountability, because the ministers will be accountable to the president, not to the people. So it's actually the National Assembly who are elected from the various constituencies and districts from across the country that are representatives of the people. So the ministers are actually appointees of the president. So to the extent that the president is able to appoint the right people and give them the freedom to demonstrate their capacity to make a difference in terms of delivering the goods, then of course he is on the way to succeed. But if the ministers are people who are also ambitious and maybe they want to go to the Senate the next election, or the president also has to consider 2027 for a second term, all of these dynamics come into play in terms of performance and accountability. And how the president is able to strategically manage these forces will determine how successful it will be. And of course, success is not just about how well politicians are able to feather their own nest, Nigerians are expecting a change in terms of their living conditions, in terms of their access to education, access to electricity, access to water, access to employment, and so on and so forth. I think there's a lot in the president's table, and he really will have a hard time trying to deal with it.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Ayede. Back to the studios. Ezenwa, yes, you say that there have been concerns expressed and sentiments equally expressed with respect to the composition of the cabinet. But special interest groups have, many would say justifiably, canvassed, if you like, special dispensations for them, as it were. Now, obviously, once the list is unveiled, there's no question about it that these special interest groups will also be looking out to see whether they have been accommodated. At a broad spectrum level, the president had said his desire is for a government of national competence. But women are itching for many more places, especially, as you know very well, they didn't fare well in the 2023 general elections. How many of them are in elective positions? So they are now looking forward to appointive offices. The youth are also a special category. And they have said, look, they need to have a voice and possibly provide the disruption that you have also articulated here. And persons with disability are also saying that we cannot be on the sidelines.
And
what are your thoughts?
My sentiments are with those dispensations that you talked about. Well, you must, if you don't like heat, don't get to the kitchen. Many times what has happened is, and that is what I have a problem with, you stay aside, people get into the process, and then you say, no, put those people who, if there are people who are people living with disabilities who meet the criteria that Professor Kari has talked about, what is that? That they are in the mix, they are in the political mix. So there was nothing that says if you are living with disability that you shouldn't support a candidate. Support him with your brown, your capacities and your competencies, and in a way that it will be clear that this constituency supported me. You mobilize the vote of your constituency for me, and that you are qualified, because there are lawyers who live with disabilities, there are medical doctors who live with disabilities, so those people can be appointed. What I don't like is somebody who is not doing anything, who stays aloof, and then once he says, oh yeah, it's our turn. No. There are women who also worked for their different candidacies, governors, House of Representatives. Those people should be appointed. So youth, the fact that you are young does not mean that you can't carry the whatever of the old. Your youth does not, that's not the only qualification. That you are young does not mean you are a disruptor. Otherwise, there are, in the universities, for instance, now, where you have young people, fees are increased, everything is done, nobody is doing anything. So you must show capacity that you have disrupted somewhere else. You know, you are not, the only place to disrupt is not at the appointment level. As a young person, were you a member of a political party? Did you disrupt in that political party? Did you show differentness? Look at what Malema is doing in South Africa, for instance. Yeah. Got into the ANC as a young person and disrupted the whole system and went and formed his own political party. So Malema,
economic freedom fighter.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that he didn't need to get into government to be a disruptor. You understand what I'm saying? So there are young people who have disrupted in agric, for instance. Maybe they have a farm, you know, and they have made a success of that farm, and they are young. There are young people who have shown capacity in ICT, and all of those things. We can find those ones, but don't just say it is our turn. I have a problem with that. It has to be more than that. It has to be more than the fact that you are a woman, more than the fact that you are living with disability, more than the fact that you are a youth. It has to be that there is something much more that you are bringing. And the one that irks me the most is the what do you call them? The diasporan community. You know, because they're also a special interest group that you talk about. They are. You know, they don't like the country. They talk about the country the way we've seen it. Oh, but once it's appointment time, they relocate. They are here.
Of the national cake too.
They are relocating. The intention.
So you have been seeing them in town.
I know them and I've seen them.
They've arrived.
Yes, they arrived. Go to the most strategic hotels in the city. You will see them. You know, and if they see you, they will be telling you.
Especially so that it is summertime. So it's like a holiday.
So you live abroad. We know what are the competencies that you are bringing to advance a particular place, and even where you live abroad, what are you doing in that place that has improved, you know, that you can point to. So I think we agreed that yes, there is need for special interest, but those special interests must be themselves involved in our country, because if you are not here, you don't know how to help our people. So the academic, the people living with disabilities, they must have shown active. So there's a department in the political parties. There's offices that are for people living with disabilities. There are offices that are for women. There are offices that are for young people in the political party. Don't stay in your house. Join the parties. Show your capacity. Show your competence. Yes, in wherever, so that it's not just after these elections you come and say, "Oh, we need to be accommodated." I think that the president needs to worry about that. And like you said, the past government was not too disposed in that direction. But it's something we need to do. But we must find them within the confines of people who are also dirtying their hands for the progress of our country.
Professor Kyari, time is ticking. Thursday is just around the corner. Do you expect a ministerial list before the time?
Absolutely. I do. As a matter of fact, like most Nigerians, I'm also waiting with bated breath. And as you said, there is a clear constitutional provision that the list should be out within 60 days. And now it's 50-something days. So I think I'm not a soothsayer, but I strongly believe that most likely this week it will be over again. The list will come out, and what we are going to do now is to see whether the list is substantially different or the same as the usual one, whether there is a chance that things are not going to be the same, and so on. Because what is very clear is that this list will be like a signature for this government. It will define this government. So it is very, very important. People are going to up their confidence, or their confidence will come down on the basis of that list. Because these are the people who constitute the cabinet of this government, who drive the program and policies of this government, and so their nature, their coloration, their antecedent, their level of competence, what they are bringing to the table would, to a very large extent, determine whether this government, the people should repose any confidence in it or not. Already there have been some worries in the past few days. Some of the steps taken by the government have not gone down well with many Nigerians. Is an opportunity also to use the cabinet to reassure the people, more so that many have even argued that some of the decisions taken so far should have waited until when the cabinet is in place. And therefore, the formation of the cabinet is a very, very important step for this government to take. So our hope is that it will be the right step.
All right, Dr. Kari, thank you very much. And Professor Ayede, we have a second topic to discuss, but obviously, gentlemen, you being regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria, we always call on you once the list of ministers, or persons nominated to be ministers, gets to be announced on the floor of the Senate. Now, by just simple arithmetic, the president has up until Friday this week, which is July the 28th, to forward the list to the Senate. That will be exactly 60 days, because June has 30 days, and then you have 28 days in July, which gives you 58 days. It was sworn in on the 29th, so 29th, 30th will be 1 day, 31st of May will be another day, 2 days. So the president has up until the 28th, which is Friday, to forward the list to the Senate. And by the way, when the president sends his communication to the National Assembly, it is a closely guarded secret. It is the business of the presiding officer at the Senate to read the communication from the president at plenary. And so if the National Assembly, more particularly in this case the Senate, does not convene an extraordinary plenary session before Tuesday or Monday next week, it depends on how his schedule goes, then we may not get to hear of those who are on the list until the Tuesday following Friday of this week, and that will be quite some time. Okay. So, gentlemen, we'd like to thank you for being our guests on Good Morning Nigeria today. Ezewan Wago, always a delight having you. Dr. Abubakar Kari, also a delight having you. And Professor Remi Ayede, we also appreciate your being with us today via Zoom from Ibadan. So do have a nice day. We'll take a short break now. When we return from the break, we'll take on our second topic.
The job of making Nigeria great is my ambition, is my dream. To renew the hope of Nigerians, to really bring about changes that will promote unity, equity, stability, and prosperity for this country. It's not a one-man's job. It's a job of all of us.
How do I cope with this heat?
By staying 5 degrees cooler.
Body odor is caused by germs, and on hot days, the sweating and the odor are more. That's why you need to get the new improved Dettol Cool Soap, which offers up to 5 degrees instant cooling sensation.
You have to move from the point where you protect and defend your religion to a point where you also recognize the rights of the other person, of the other religion, and protect it. So if I am protecting my own territory and my own people and trying to emphasize their rights and protect their rights, I should also be thinking about how to protect the rights of the others.
Both Islam and Christianity recognize and defer to God, and both recognize the temporariness of the life of this world, and that ultimately we all go back to God for the day of reckoning, when everybody will render an account of his life on this temporary abode.
Welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, Sub-Saharan African Skills and Apprenticeship Stakeholders Network, that is SASANET, Skills and Apprenticeship Conference, is just about getting on the way. To discuss more about that conference, we have in the studios 3 guests. First, let's welcome Professor Idris Bugaje, Executive Secretary, National Board for Technical Education, NBTE. Professor Bugaje, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
He's also the interim chairman of SASANET. That's a mouthful there. Also here with us in the studios, it's Honorable Usman Sila. He's the General Secretary of SASASNet.
From the Gambia.
Well, it's from the Gambia, all the way from the Gambia. Banjul, I imagine. Yes, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
That's right. Okay.
And we also have Engineer Suleiman Mohammed Yusuf, Director of Vocational Technical and Skills Development, National Board for Technical Education. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, so let's begin with the Executive Secretary of MBTE, who is also the interim chair of the Sub-Saharan African Skills and Apprenticeship Stakeholders Network. What is this network all about before we get into your conference that is coming up?
Thank you very much. This network was established for English-speaking Sub-Saharan Africa in order to bring all stakeholders on board so that we can have a common front to address the challenges of skills development in Africa, and especially apprenticeship systems. If you go through every major city in Africa, in Nigeria, Gambia, Ghana, Zimbabwe, Kenya, all through up to South Africa, you'll have a lot of informal skill sector. Go to Apo Mechanic Village, it's a roadside thing. Go to Panteka in Kaduna, go to Araria Market in Aba, go to Computer Village. This is a very latent potential which Africa is not harnessing. So we felt there is need to bring all stakeholders on board, government, organized private sector, labor unions, all of them, so that we can work together towards reinventing this informal sector, bringing it, upgrading the technology being used, introduce certification for the skills training, and this way we are going to now, meet probably the skills labor deficit that we are facing today. Dangote refinery, celebrated refinery, probably prematurely commissioned last May. They imported over 11,500 Indian skilled labor. If we had, organized our informal subsector, we could have generated some thousands of skilled labor to fit into that project. The AKK gas pipeline, the same story. The upcoming $25 billion Trans-Saharan gas pipeline, which will take Nigerian gas to Europe. If care is not taken, this same thing will be repeated. So that's why we say, let us mobilize sub-Saharan African countries. Let us try to put our house in order. Let us compare notes. Let us adopt a common occupational standard so that with migration of labor, which is coming up very soon through the African Free Trade Zone, we need to have some common framework. So we are working towards that. We are working towards upscaling the informal sector, empowering them, improving their output, certifying them, and creating a common African standard, at least among the English-speaking countries, because the French-speaking countries are already doing it very well. If you go to Abuja here, any of those construction sites you go, the best tilers, the best POPs, the best finishers are from Benin and Togo. Because the French-speaking African countries have organized their system very well. They have formalized a lot of the informal sector. But in Nigeria and other English-speaking countries, there is a lot of inertia to do that.
Why do you think that it's so? Do you think it's because we've concentrated more on paper qualification and
that's the main challenge. That's the main challenge. We have focused more on paper qualification all through since independence. While French-speaking African countries, they have realized the value of skills. They have organized, a standard training program for their youth, and they have been even exported across to other parts of the world.
Okay.
So there is need really to re-engineer that sector for Africa's overall socio-economic development.
Professor Idris Bugaje, thank you very much. I'm sure our viewers can feel you.
Your passion.
And it's worrisome to learn that the Dangote refinery had labor imported into the country, technical labor. Inevitably, as the point is, and so we have capital flight arising from that. So you're having this conference. Give us some insight into what the conference is all about. I'm talking about Usman Sila.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us to
to the studio to talk about this newly formed continental organization called SASASNet. Perhaps a little bit of history. It all started in Cotonou when we were invited, the whole of Africa, by the development partners, World Bank, ILO, to talk about the informal sector. How do we formalize it? And that at the end of the meeting, we realized that there is a deficit in terms of the English-speaking countries in Africa coming together, having a system in place that seeks to upgrade and enhance the informal sector. So after realizing that, because we've realized that our similarities are more than our differences. The reality, the professor is talking about Nigeria, is also in the Gambia. You would have some tasks that you need experts coming from outside to come and do it. If it is Africans, that's fine. But the sad thing is that in more often than not is from outside of Africa that such skills are coming from. So we felt that there is need to have a network so that we will accompany our countries that to promote. We're going to promote, coordinate, and support skills and apprenticeship in Africa, both the informal and the formal sectors. So we have about 17 African countries so far that are being part of the network from English-speaking Africa. We're hoping to increase it. In fact, we're just starting. We want to level up with the French, like as indicated by the professor, that for them they are more organized than, relatively organized than us. So how do we up ourselves? But we are also open, our doors are open for non-English speaking African countries like the Lusophone, countries like Angola, Mozambique, Equatorial Guinea Spanish. So even at some point we want to come to a stage where when we level ourselves to the standard, we can form a merger. So we can have a Pan-African sort of a network. But for the time being, this is what our reality requires, and this is what we are doing. We are responding to the times. And let me just emphasize that the talent is, we have latent talent among young people. There's demographic dividend. We are not taking advantage of it. How do we help them develop skills? Those who have skills, how do we upgrade it? We have a system called, an approach called RPL, recognizing their skills, but formalizing it, giving them certificates. So this SASASNet is coming to solve a problem, and we are going to be a game changer. That's our objective. We want to be a game changer. We want to change the system, the reality on the ground, so that the skills that we have that are latent in the continent will enhance them, and then ensure that our young people, there's this incentive for them going to Europe through this perilous journey. In the Gambia we call it back way, and then it's just suicidal. When everything is in Africa, what they are going for there, that is created, part of it comes from here.
Yes.
So why don't we, the potential is here. So SASASNet is really coming to be a game changer. And for the time being, we have support and goodwill from governments, from operators, all the stakeholders in the countries, member countries that we have identified and are part of the process. So we are here in Nigeria. By the way, he's no longer the interim, he's the chairperson. He's elected, confirmed. Okay. It was done on Thursday. And myself too, just last evening, I was also serving as interim secretary general, but the appointment is, appointment is confirmed by the executive last night.
Congratulations.
So these are substantive positions now.
Congratulations. So you both were placeholders.
Yeah, so now you are now at the center of the table. Yes. Now let's bring in Suleiman Mohammed. Let's look at the theme for this conference, which is Skills, Agenda and Apprenticeship System in the Development of Sub-Saharan Africa. Tell us, what will this conference explore?
Thank you very much. It's going to bring about the promotion of skills and apprenticeship across the English-speaking Sub-Saharan Africa. We all believe now that skills is the global currency of labor. So if we have these latent potentials, why can't we develop them? Why can't we give them standard certification? Why can't we give them recognized qualification that would enable them move across the shores of Nigeria, Africa, to gain engagement or employment with the employment window available outside. So this is going to be truly a game changer, whereby we are no more going to allow our young people to be moving across Sahara without the recognized skills. If they have a skills, they have certification recognized, they can be welcome wherever they go with red carpet.
Yeah, yes.
You know, sorry, I know, Juma, I will say this because there are some annual events, for instance, like the pilgrimages. And it is doubtful that the citizens of those countries provide all the skilled labor required for facilitating those pilgrimages, whether at the holy sites in Mecca or in Rome or in Jerusalem. You have labor that is engaged. So how do we fit into that? I believe that's part of the matrix that we're looking at. But, Professor Bugaji, it's an issue we have encountered on Good Morning Nigeria. What we're actually talking about now is the failure of technical education. Where did we get it wrong for us in Nigeria?
Well, I think we got it wrong immediately after independence. You remember 1947, the Yaba College of Technology was established. 1956, Kaduna Polytechnic was established, and they were focused in developing skilled manpower. Technical colleges well equipped during colonial days, but today those colleges are a shadow of themselves. If you go to a technical college, the first thing you see is a broken gate. When you enter, a leaky roof, archaic equipment that doesn't work, students that are disenfranchised, basic wood and metal to teach them basic skills not available. This is the challenge. We abandoned technical and vocational education and training in Nigeria. We focused on university, qualifications, the so-called ivory tower syndrome. That was what really created the problem. And now we are paying a heavy price for that, in the sense that today Nigeria is importing skilled labor from across the world. Asia is exporting labor. You have mentioned pilgrimage. Bangladesh, I visited them just a few months ago. They were exporting over 11.5 million labor across the world. 2.5 million in Saudi Arabia. Construction sites, pilgrimage sites, everywhere. If you go to Morocco, Morocco is exporting labor in hundreds of thousands every year. I visited them 4 years ago. 500,000 youth were engaged in skills training. I saw an electric car 4 years ago in Morocco, and I asked the instructors, why are you training students on an electric car when I did not see any electric car on your streets? They told me, look, we're not training for our local market only. We're training for export. Anytime Renault brings a new model, they will immediately send it to us before they even start marketing it, so that we can train young Moroccans on how to manage that car, and we can export that labor. And all the youth, we ask questions. When you finish, where many were saying will go to Germany, some will go to Saudi Arabia, some will go to Dubai. They were so much motivated. We have abandoned technical vocational education, but there is hope. I have seen that the new government has made TVET one of its major pillar. I think it's pillar number 4.
Yes.
And that's a major remarkable shift. And if this thing is sustained with sincerity, I think Nigeria will come back on track. Nigeria will start, empowering the youth with skills. Nigeria will start exporting labor. Export of labor has even given India political advantage. The Prime Minister of UK is now an Indian. Somebody asked a question, when did British rule ended in India? They said 1948. When did Indian rule started in Britain? 2022. Because that was the time a skilled labor exported previously has now become a prime minister. In the United States, export of skilled labor has created a vacancy for them. They have now a sitting vice president, originally from India. Nigeria and other African countries can really rule the world through skills export. And it's not going to be a brain drain. It will not be. It will be a brain gain. In the sense that if you take big economies like Turkey, is the 17th largest economy in the world. If you go to Germany, more than 10% of the skilled labor in Germany are of Turkish origin. They have acquired those skills. They are now going back to Turkey to build industries. I have seen the Mercedes-Benz shock absorber plant in Turkey near Istanbul. Every shock absorber for Mercedes across the world is made in Turkey. Because they have gone there, they have acquired the skills, they have understood the standards, and now they are applying them in their own country. Nigeria can do the same. So really, the skills can be a game changer. And I would like government to invest more. I would like the private sector to invest more. And any private sector that imports skill should be penalized.
You know, Professor Bugaji, do you mind? Thanks. You are not like soccer.
Yes.
He was talking about Turkey and Germany. Ozil, you know Ozil?
Yeah.
Ozil, he played for Arsenal.
Yeah.
And he also played for the German national team,
Exactly.
amongst the World Cup winners, originally from Turkey.
Originally from Turkey. Let's bring Osman here. You know, it's said that civilization started from Africa, and most of these things we see in Europe and were constructed by Black Africans. And do you think it is now time for Africans to come together on the same table to share ideas so that the country can move forward and not just be an importer of labor and stop the Japa syndrome that we have in Nigeria? Once they get the skills, they get out and, you know, go to work in other countries for better pay. So how can this conference you are having bring in young people on board and ensure that they get what is worth?
Well, thank you very much. In fact, that is the essence of SuccessNet, that we realize Africa's potential. We realize that Africa can only benefit from its potential if it comes together, if African countries come together. We have shared the same experience in terms of colonialism, in terms of slavery, and the challenges, post-independent challenges. The similarities, like I said, we have more similarities than differences. Yeah. So how do we harmonize? SuccessNet is coming to bring that closeness so that we'll have a common approach, a common perspective based on our common experience, our common past, so that we'll head to the future, to our destination collectively. And we can only do that by establishing networks of this nature where everybody comes on board. We share experiences. Nigeria has strength in some areas, weaknesses in certain areas. Gambia has strength in some areas, weaknesses in certain areas. So how do we come sit around a table to discuss, see those that are more endowed, how they can support those that are less endowed to come up. And in fact, like they said, we may not call it brain drain. We can organize ourselves in such a way that the skills, part of it can stay to develop our countries, to develop our economies. We can also export it in an organized manner, because now you see this skill exportation sometimes does not benefit the skilled workers, the middle persons. There are intermediaries who benefit more from it.
Yes.
And in fact, there are even scammers. So, but how do you organize it? The state can come, our government, we can encourage, because for us, our role is going to be advocating, supporting. We are going to accompany governments, and we hope they'll be giving us their listening ears. In fact, they are part of the process. They are integral in SuccessNet, all the governments.
Okay, so the conference, give us an idea, dates and level of participation on location.
It's starting today. In fact, it started like last Thursday when we had our elections, our first General Assembly of members, where we elected our executive, Professor Bagaje, who has been very instrumental from day one, is confirmed as the substantive chairperson of SuccessNet. And the other, we have vice presidents from the 4 regions of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and by the way, sub-Saharan Africa. And we also have other executive holders, including the Secretary General. And then yesterday we had the first executive committee meeting, inaugural meeting, where we consider, we constitute the executive formally, and then started to chart the way forward. What do we need to do? We've done that. We have a clear perspective now as to what we want to do, how we are going to do it. So we have that. Yeah. So, and then today we're going to kick off the event. That is the formal launch.
Okay.
Where the Vice President, His Excellency Qasim Shatima, is invited to do the official inauguration, and that is going to be a 2-day workshop where we have presenters of papers within and outside of Nigeria, but Africa. The ILO is also supporting the process, the World Bank supporting the process, GIZ, German development based in Nigeria, is also supporting the process, and NBT is integral.
Yeah.
In fact, they are the caution.
Okay, we are running out of time. Briefly, in 30 seconds, are state governments keen into
Yes,
this
state
conference?
governments are
in
also,
30 seconds.
Yeah, we have what we call the National Stakeholders Committee. So under that, we have the federal government, the state governments coming on board and trying which role they can play, because state governments have to reinvent their technical colleges.
Okay.
That's the foundation for creating skills. State governments also have to take census of the informal apprenticeship programs that are taking place and what interventions they need to give. Improve the infrastructure, the road and electricity supply, improve the equipment available to those, just like what Abia State government did to Araria Market. Before, Araria Market was full of cobblers, but today shoes made in Araria can be exported across the world.
They've been sold
and
in
people
Italy
even believe they are being made in Italy.
Exactly.
Yes.
So we wish you all the best at
Thank
the
you.
conference, and we hope that this will bring more, innovation to the country and develop Africa as a whole. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Professor Idris Bugaji, Executive Secretary, National Board for Technical Education. He is also the Chairman, Sub-Saharan African Skills and Apprenticeship Stakeholders Network, SASANET. Thank you so much for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Honorable Osman Silla, Secretary General, Sub-Saharan African Skills and Apprenticeship Stakeholders Network. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. We also have in the studio Engineer Suleiman Mohammed Yusuf, Director of Vocational Technical and Skills Development, National Board for Technical Education, MBTE. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on the program. We wish you all the best. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thanks so much for being part of it. Join us tomorrow for another edition.
Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley.
Now, I'm Jummai Yusuf.